said, in sunny Albany. It is approaching 95 degrees here on this fine May day. So thank you so much to all of you who have joined. We're very excited about the upcoming CBT field testing window that opens on Monday. So Monday morning at 7 a.m., folks could start testing from Nextera Admin and the Nextera Secure Browser. So first, I'm going to introduce my co-pilot here, Christy Tooker from Questar. And do you want to tell them a little bit of housekeeping?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
So the folks on the phone, Heather is going to primarily be speaking today. She will take a couple of breaks for questions. We're going to go ahead and unmute your line if you do want to speak. If you do want to speak, please raise your hand so that we know to unmute your line, and then we will go from there. If you do not have audio control and would like to type in a question, you can type that right into the questions box, and we'll also have a team on the line to answer those questions as well.
Great. Okay. So what we've got here today is we've got our computer-based testing, lessons learned from both operational CBT and CBT ELA and math. So we learned a lot during these two administrations. I think with any kind of software deployment, the second administration, CBT math, went much smoother than ELA, but we're going to walk you through what we know and what we can share with you for that administration to go smoother starting next week. So first of all, just a little overview. For operational CBT math and ELA, we had more than 28,000 students across the state that tested, and that was taking either one or more test sessions on CBT. From more than 190 schools, there are about 160 that participated in math, and then in ELA, and then 120 nearly that participated in math. So overall, it was a huge success. It was a huge success because our students really liked it. We heard really positive feedback from students, as well as test administrators and even scoring. The computer really simplified the process, and but there are some schools that encountered issues, and of course we will also tell you a little bit about that. Okay, so for field testing, we've got more than 900 schools that are participating. Again, starting next week on Monday. There is at least one school in every New York State county that is participating in CBT. So we're excited. We had more than 800 schools participate last year, so our numbers are growing. Yay. And again, May 22nd through June 9th is the window. Schools can determine at any time when they want to administer the CBT field test. Some quick notes there. If a school has, say, 3 different classes and they've been assigned ELA for CBT, they do not need to administer all classes for field testing at the same time. So there's a little more flexibility with field testing. We want our schools to be able to fit it in whenever they can, and the expected time period is 1 class period, 40 to 45 minutes. And additionally, you may have heard us already give this information or tell you this. If you encounter technical issues, you can just close the lid and students can walk away. That's the phrase that we use to describe the low-stakes testing environment for the CBT field tests. However, what we would like is, we know that the whole state, we're moving in there one day, right? We all want computer-based testing to be the future for our students in New York State. So if you do encounter technical issues, we encourage you to reach out to Questar or to reach out to NYSED. Call us directly. We'll be sitting here waiting to help. Okay, so first, these slides are posted on CBT support. In the field testing section, I've added a presentation article. You can follow along and you can have this information on your very own computer. This is the Questar customer support information. There's a couple bullets there to help you help them help you, right? So Questar is almost always going to ask for your BEDS code, your school name. If you have called Questar previously, be sure to have your ticket number ready, because Even if it's a new issue, they can look up all of your other information through that previous ticket and just get you to a solution a little bit quicker. And they're going to ask questions like, what kind of testing devices are your students using? What operating systems, such as all my students are using the iPad iOS 10.2. Just have that information ready, and about how many students are affected by any kind of technical issue. Okay. So first off, for those schools that are new to CBT, there are issues with printing student login tickets. There are troubleshooting tips in the original SAM, which you can find on the OSA website. And this is a screenshot from from maybe page 122 or 112 in the SAM. So printing student login tickets, we have found that schools are much more successful if they save the login, the student roster and of the login tickets and to PDF and then print it. And then you'll find that the login tickets should match up on your label printing. Okay. So student testing devices. So this is especially important for schools that have a one-to-one device scenario. That means your students, they're responsible for charging their own computers. They may take them home at night. We had some students who walked into CBT during operational with computers that weren't charged. So when they did that, the students were logged off. They were booted right out of the secure browser every time their computer notified them that, hey, you've only got 10% battery left. So make sure that your students are charging their computers. For a lot of the schools and districts I know have carts of computers that will be ready and that will be charged. But in addition to that, have the cords on hand, have extra power strips, have extra computers. So just a good mantra is extra everything, but charging is really important. Okay, so next we want to make sure the hottest topic, we always say at the road shows and in any kind of presentation, is discussions about test read and how to serve that accommodation in the computer. So the accommodation test read for students, which is in their 504 or IEP, is delivered on computer via the text-to-speech functionality. And these are two different ways of delivering the accommodation. If it's test read, that's a classroom accommodation in Nextera Admin, and I'll show you that on the next slide. And that means that a human reader is actually reading a paper test to the student. That is not a computer-delivered accommodation. If it is text-to-speech, that means that the computer is reading. You'll often hear us say the robots are reading to the student. If you take a look at the Nextera Setup and Installation Guide, you're going to find tips for setting up text-to-speech, perhaps for loading different voice packs. So take a look at that and note that text-to-speech is only the online accommodation. The student is sitting in front of a computer and the robots via the computer are reading to the student. And on the next slide, we'll show you what this looks like in Nextera Admin. So you can see on the left, these are the cute little icons that one uses to select the text-to-speech computer-delivered accommodation. And then over on the right, there are classroom accommodations, because we know that folks want to be able to note how their students are testing in the classroom, like for flexibility and setting, and whether or not a human is reading a paper test to the student. Okay, so know the difference? Selecting text-to-speech in the classroom accommodation will not make the robots available. So along the lines of the making sure students have their computers charged and that they're not getting the low battery notification that will kick them out of the test, screensavers and computer notifications, they need to be disabled. This is the same scenario. If these pop-ups come up while a student is testing in the secure browser, the student will be kicked out of that secure browser. This is a security feature. We don't want our students doing anything else except taking the test in the secure browser on that computer device at that time. if the Nextera secure browser suspects that other activity is occurring on the computer, the student's locked out of the test until that issue is resolved. So close applications on the student's testing device, such as email, anything that can send an automatic notification. And, you know, we provide this in a best practices article that's on CBT support, but we've found after ELA and math that there are a lot more different other notifications that are occurring on student testing devices. So we just wanted to make sure and note for you what we've heard. And also the timeout. So students may be writing their essay. We found that they did in ELA. They wrote their essay on their scratch paper, and during that time, the computer might time out. Now, the Nextera secure browser never times out. It always stays open, so students never locked out of the test due to a timing issue, but the computer may do that. So that's that. Okay, so something that you may want to let the students know is that there are 2 test tools that do not persist if a student pauses the test. A student can pause the test at any time, for instance, to get up and go to the bathroom. In order to get back into the test, the student needs to be assisted with a proctor pin, and with the proctor, we're going to give some best practices and tips on the proctor pin a little later in this presentation. But what we want students to know is if they've highlighted something in an ELA passage and they plan to come back to it later, that highlighting doesn't stick. We know it. We are looking into addressing that for next year, but also notes that a student might have added, such as come back to this later or what have you. And you can see this on the screen. Those will be wiped out if a student returns. So we just, you know what, if you let the students know that, then it's not as surprising and it's a better testing experience. But again, we'll look into that for next year. And note about the highlighter. What you can see here in front of me is you see question 1 and question 2. These are from the sample tests that are publicly available online. Questions 1 and 2 are using the same ELA passage. So, but the highlighting that the student has done in question 1 does not carry over into question 2. This really upset students. We get it. It was probably the #1 feedback in the administrator's survey after operational CBT. So the expectation that a student has, because it happens in the print world, if I highlight an ELA passage and I go on to a next question that is for that same ELA passage, I would expect those highlights to still be there. That's not the case. So just letting students know that again, you know, kind of helps them to have a better testing experience. Okay. And so this is our biggest lesson learned from CBT Math, is that we did encounter issues with the equation editor freezing, and it wasn't due to the Nextera secure browser specifically. It had to do with the fact that the Chromebooks and iPads really needed to be rebooted. And we'll talk about this again in this presentation. We are considering making it a requirement that the computers be rebooted overnight, Chromebooks, iPads, and other testing devices. We're not there yet. At this point, what we're doing for this year is we're sharing it as a best practice. So we did find that there were less instances of freezing, you know, constructed response boxes and equation editors if a student's testing devices was rebooted fresh. If you have students that encounter freezing equation editors, freezing CR boxes, go ahead, shut down that computer and reboot it, have the student log back in, see if that corrects the issue. If not, you might try moving the student to a new testing device. Okay. So know your Wi-Fi. So you should be familiar and aware of all the Wi-Fi hotspots that are available in your school, and make sure that students are only connecting to the Wi-Fi that they're intended to connect to. So in preparing for CBT, a lot of schools purchased Wi-Fi that they would have an individual Wi-Fi hotspot per classroom. That's a great idea, and it worked very well in many schools. But also, on top of that, schools need to make sure that those student testing devices are only connecting to that classroom Wi-Fi. And the issue there is that students, maybe they may have a one-to-one device scenario where they take their Chromebooks home at night, and then when they step onto campus the next day, their computer is set up to automatically connect to the guest Wi-Fi, say, where the hotspot is located in the cafeteria. Well, what happens is that when that student then is trying to submit the test and say they're on one side of the building, they're not actually connected to the classroom Wi-Fi that's intended for the test session, and the student's trying to submit, they've got a weak signal, the submitting might just spin the Nextera secure browser. So we know it's an extra step, but if you are concerned about this at all and you need to keep your guest Wi-Fi on in your school, because we know it's a reality that you can't just turn the internet off for everybody else, that you might want to make sure that those testing devices have forgotten the guest Wi-Fi, that they're only seeing the classroom Wi-Fi that's intended for the CBT test. Okay. So make sure that students and proctors are familiar with the online-offline indicator. That's kind of piggybacking on that Wi-Fi scenario for students that might have been connected to the guest Wi-Fi across the school. We had students who didn't realize that they were offline, and when they tried to submit, again, the test just spins. And it causes anxiety for the students. Questar is collecting those student responses in a 60-second heartbeat. That's sending the student responses over to the Questar servers. But students, when they see spinning and they see that their test isn't submitting, they get worried, and we don't want worried students. So make sure that the proctors know and they're familiar, because the proctors are supposed to be reviewing the review screen for students before the students are submitting the test. So just noting that now here and making sure everyone's aware. Okay. Proctor pins. So the #1 call to Questar during CBT is, where is my proctor pin? So the proctor pin is available on the home page of Nextera admin. District test coordinators, school test coordinators, they can see those proctor pins, and they're distributing them in the little print material packages to proctors on the day of a CBT test. So it's on that home page. There's a different proctor pin per school. The proctor pin does not change among CBT administrations. So if you're a school that participated in ELA CBT, Math CBT, and now field testing CBT, first of all, good for you. Second, note that if you didn't change your proctor pin in any of those administrations, it's the same pin. Is that a good practice? Probably not. You should probably change your proctor pin, but you don't have to. But it would remain the same. And also, we try to make sure that our schools have a communication mechanism or plan. If a proctor pin becomes compromised, how will you make sure that all of your proctors know that the proctor pin has changed? Because the scenario is a student comes back from the bathroom, the proctor manually types that proctor pin to the keyboard for the student, and it doesn't work. We don't want that to happen. Again, that worries the student. That's an anxiety situation. So just final note, the proctor pin is case sensitive. Student login credentials are not, access codes are not, but the proctor pin is. Okay, so the proctors, when the student is accessing the test, they're going to see a cover page. And the the proctor should instruct the students to note what grade level and what subject does the student see on the cover page. If I'm a grade 5 student and I'm accessing my CBT field test, I should see grade 5 in front of me. Many of you may be aware of the technical glitch during ELA where there were 64 students on day 1. Grade 3 students were served the grade 4 test. There are some schools where their proctors noticed this, and that was really helpful. They backed the students right out of those tests. So just a little tip, that technical issue should never happen, but we we want our proctors to know that they can help by ensuring the students are reviewing the cover page. It's not moving. Is it moving for you?
Yeah, it's moving for me.
Oh, no. Okay. Up, there we go. Okay, didn't move for me. I'm okay. All right. Up, now it moved twice. So there we go. Okay, so I noted that proctors should review the cover page. They should also review the review screen. And sorry, I should have had an image of the review screen on this slide. So the review screen is the screen that pops up that a student can use to navigate to different questions if they're not navigating sequentially through the next and previous buttons. But this shows the proctor and the student whether or not all questions have been answered. So we want our proctors for computer-based testing to look at that screen to assist not the student has missed any questions. And then I pulled out some language from the school administrator's manual that that the proctor should be looking at the review screen and, of course, noting if any answers are left blank. Okay. And so another issue, we know that not all schools have a one-to-one device situation where all students have their own computers, and many of the computers out there, especially for field testing for some newer schools that haven't done CBT before, you may have computers that are going to be used many times by many students during CBT field testing. So just some tips that to instruct students that if they've enabled foreign language keyboards, enlarged cursors, settings that they can manage through the computer prior to getting into the Nextera secure browser, we should make sure that those are disabled, because what happens then is the next student logs in to use that same testing device in the Nextera secure browser, and the student is locked in to that foreign language keyboard, or the student then has to exit the test. And that's not a seamless testing experience, so just little tip to do a little bit of housekeeping if you have students that might be using different settings on a testing device. And then also, okay, so just a note about what happens to a student if those issues aren't disabled. Okay, I left this slide in here. This was from our operational CBT because what it has to do with it has to do with the organization of students, printing student login tickets, and also using the not testing codes. We understand that right now, it's noted as a known issue, the not tested codes are not available for field testing. They'll be available tomorrow morning in Nextera admin. But a very important note is that we are not requiring our schools to use the not tested codes. However, and I've heard from many of you already, our schools, they want to mimic the operational testing experience, right? This is your opportunity for a dry run. In operational CBT, you're going to have to use those not tested codes, such as testing on NISA or absent for entire test or refused entire test. To make it easier, we advise for math that that DTCs and teachers, they could move students that fall into those categories into special classes. They could create classes on Nextera admin, move the students into, like, say, a testing on NISA class, and then the students that remain in the CBT class are only those students that are going to be taking the test, and therefore you're only printing student login tickets for those specific students. This worked so well for math. And then also, I want to note that a lot of our schools that did this, they went back and they selected the not testing codes later. They got their students up and running and moving for operational CBT. But you should just note, and it's not, of course, doesn't affect field testing, do anything else magical, right? It doesn't remove the student from the access code login ticket process. You actually have to move the student in order to not print a login ticket. It's slow again. Is it moving online? Very slow.
Oh.
Well, maybe we should have checked our guest Wi-Fi. There we go. All right. You've probably heard me say this many times. When in doubt, reboot. So the first step when technical issues encountered is to have that student back out of the secure browser and log back in, right? But we found in both ELA and math administrations, computers needed to be rebooted. They got angry. They became out of state. There were oddities that we just couldn't explain. But when we had the schools reboot the computers, they were magically fixed. So that's just a little tip, troubleshooting that you can do on your own. But always, if you have any issues, just call Questar and they'll walk you through reviewing any technical issues. I wish we had some music before this. This is fun. Is it taking a long time in the real world too? Okay. Oh, there we are. Okay. So some issues to know about CBT math. So the equation editor, and I believe I have a screenshot of the equation editor coming up. We saw it actually, I think, on like slide 5. The equation editor may be unfamiliar territory in software for many of our students out there in New York State, especially our grade 3 and grade 4 students. We have instructed many times that we're hoping that our schools are using the practice tests that are not only publicly available in the question sampler, but also available through the Nextera secure browser. So the equation editor is available in those practice tests. Students should be familiar with the different functions and tools. We have a lot of articles on CBT support that can assist you with getting up to speed on the equation editor, definitions of all the buttons, even a helpful little video for the equation editor. But what we have found is that when students were more familiar with the equation editor, they were much more comfortable taking the test, and they did like it. They liked the little features and the buttons. And just know that all math field tests will feature the equation editor. And now we'll go to, and I think there's images of what the equation editor looks like here. And so these are the two most common equation editor boxes that you see in front of us here on the screen. The top equation editor has all the buttons tailored for grades 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and 7 and 8. And then also there might be a little answer box. So something that you should just know for operational CBT next year if you're new to computer-based testing is that the folks that are scoring operational CBT through seeing everything that the student enters on the page. So say if a student doesn't write the answer is 5 centimeters in that tiny little answer box, but they wrote it in the equation editor above, the student would still be scored on that because the human who is scoring through score points sees that. And they see it in two different ways, the raw text and also exactly as the student entered it on screen. Yeah, just taking time. Okay, so this is just a slide to, first of all, show you that we do fix things, right? So we had an issue with ELA where if teachers had gone to, if they had printed student login tickets and then had changed student test accommodations such as reverse contrast or text-to-speech, then the student was getting a different password. That's fixed. That no longer happens. So you can set student accommodations at any time before field testing right up until the students start testing, and the password or the login tickets that may have been previously printed will still work. So fixed. Yay. And finally, this is the last slide. Many of you already know this, but you need to know that we do have a CBT field testing section on CBT support. It's cbtsupport.nicefed.gov, and it is https:// And you can follow. You can sign up for alerting, and you'll get our words as soon as they're posted to CBT support. The great thing about this is that we are posting known issues already right now. So you'll get the latest and greatest, and this is our primary form of communicating with the field right now. So on that note, do we want to open it up for some questions? Yep.
So from here, we're going to offer the field to ask any questions. If you want to ask a question out loud so everyone could hear you, if you could raise your hand, and I'll go ahead and unmute you. And then we'll take it from there.
How many do we have attending here today?
109.
Can you see?
109.
109. Great.
Hold on, I did see the hand. Emily, we will start with you.
Hello, Emily. Can you hear us?
Hi. Thank you. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, great. Thank you. One of our schools was asking if they could give the field test to only one class in the grade, or if they had to give it to every class in the grade.
Hey, this is Clara. It should be everyone in the grade. You can't
Thank you.
really pick and
Yep.
choose. Sure.
They can pick and choose their time.
Right.
So we are flexible, but they all do need to take the field test.
Any other hands? Let's see. I'm afraid we've got a quiet group, Heather.
We do. Seriously, this is your moment. Starts Monday. Did we get any questions during that we could go over? Sure. The way that it works, one reason you may not have had luck is that during the account creation process, it actually sends you over to data support. We're working on it. It sends you out of the CBT container. So first step, find the section on CBT support to which you would like to have the latest and greatest news. You need to create an account on CBT support, and the citation is up on the upper right. And then once you're signed in, you can click the cute little follow arrow that is next to the section heading. And there are two options there. They do the same thing. Just select that you want to be alerted of new articles. And then after that, you should see the little follow change to following. You will be actively following. Does that help?
That was Christy McGrath that asked that question.
Okay, Christy?
She could. I'm going to find you and unmute you.
Oh, we're going to unmute you, Christy, to see if that helps. And knowing that once you create an account, you're shoved out of CBT support and you actually have to go ahead and navigate back to CBT support by putting it in your URL will help, and probably log back in.
Christy, it doesn't look like you have audio. If you have any further questions, please just follow up in the questions box. Heather, we had another follow-up question about moving students that are not taking the test. If you could clarify, or if you'd like to.
Sure.
It says, could you clarify about moving students who are not taking the test?
Okay. So again, this is not necessary. It is just a helpful tip for housekeeping. And one of the reasons that we recommend that you move students out of a CBT class if they're not taking the test is because you're printing login tickets for all the students that are in that CBT class. And so if you don't want to shuffle through the login tickets and manually remove those students that might be taking NISA, you can, on Nextera Admin, move students into a newly created class. What we saw for math is that a lot of schools, they labeled those classes as, say, refusals or absent students into that class. Christy, do you want to give do you have any tips to add? No? Okay.
Sorry. To follow up on the not tested, can not tested codes be entered en masse or instead by one by one?
They can't. They are individual. And you know what? I'm on the fence about whether or not we should have the multi-student edit for those refusals, but we will look into it. That has been asked already once before.
Not just refusals, all not
Yep.
testing.
All not. Well, I've been seeing NISA.
Okay, let's strike that
Yeah.
language.
My principals are having difficulty accessing the Proctor webinar. Where do they get the sign-on information?
Okay, so the webinar or the lessons learned webinar. The lessons learned webinar right now, the URL is posted in the CBT field testing section at the top. I put the webinar that you can actively join it right now in both the presentation slides article and in the webinar URL.
More specifically, they're asking about the Proctor webinar, I believe, from last week.
Sure. Okay. So let's see here. Is it on CBT? It's on CBT support, and if you search for Proctor, it should be the first article, but we did post the presentation and video. That's right. You can watch a video. And I think that's in the CBT field testing section. Oscar-worthy video.
You mentioned that the not tested students would still print logins if they were not moved. Will they also show on the progress screen?
Yes, they will. Yeah. So they'll show on the progress screen, and unless you set a not tested code, such as taking NISA, you'll see that the student may not have started the test yet. And that'll just throw, you want that progress and that testing status details page to be your really at a glance what's happening in my classroom. So again, another reason to perhaps move those students.
And to follow up on the Proctor webinar again, I thought they needed a password and login for the webinar, and they do not. Mm-hmm. That is a public URL that they can access. Does it matter if we recently had a teacher leave the school, but her name is still attached to the student?
Well, okay. So what you might want to do, instance, is the DTC should really go in and they should edit that teacher account. They should remove the email address from the teacher's account edit page. And they should find whoever is going to be the new teacher for that classroom, or they should add a proctor to that classroom to manage that testing. And there is no delete function for users. So what it is you have to disable the user. So you would disable the user by removing the email address and also unchecking the active user box on the account edit page.
So to follow up on that, what if we have a teacher on family leave and a sub is in her place? Can we edit?
Yeah, sure. Put that sub in there. And I got a question. Somebody called me earlier today about this. So what you would do in that situation is the DTC can create new users. So the DTC would create a new user for that sub, make her a teacher, him, her, a teacher. And then on the class page, you can edit and change the teacher for that class in a drop-down menu. So that new teacher will then show up in the drop-down menu and then just select the new teacher you want associated to the class.
You have a hand up, Heather.
Ooh, how exciting. All right.
Teresa Curry.
Hello. Okay. Hello, Teresa.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, great. Two quick questions. Can the, as a house, the non-tested student codes be entered after the fact for last-minute opt-outs, absentees, and so on?
Yes. Yes, they sure can. And just so you know, you'll be able to edit your class data, such as the not tested codes, up until the end of the CBT window, which is June 9th. So you can certainly, focus on getting those students into CBT and testing on the day of testing, and then housekeeping, make sure and go back a couple days later and mark those not tested codes. Great question.
Great. And then I just had one other question. Will there ultimately be an electronic form of the math reference tables? As of this morning, there were no documents on the CBT website. I spoke with them at Questar, and they're working on fixing it now. However, is there an electronic version that is in the future where we wouldn't have to then download it and print out paper copies for children?
Yeah, that is, well, Teresa, that is new to us. There is an electronic reference sheet.
So let me,
and a print one.
For computer-based testing schools, requests are with materials that you'll be receiving today and tomorrow. They're sending you print copies of reference sheets if you're testing in that grade. So you will receive a piece of paper for that reference sheet for that student.
But the reference sheet is also
But it also is in the platform, the electronic version, in the platform. And
No,
probably,
it actually wasn't. We were on the phone for quite some time.
you're not in the student's test login.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the reference sheet will be available electronically to them, but you will receive a paper copy along with teacher directions and a school administrator's manual, and you should receive a box of materials
tomorrow.
Today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
So on that note, is it possible that moving forward in the future, can that type of supportive documentation be sent out, since it's somewhat non-secure, can that be sent out earlier? Because we do a lot of preparation behind the scenes, you know, in the weeks leading up to it. So if we can get our hands on that paperwork for the teachers even a week or two earlier, that would be tremendously helpful.
Sure. You know what? I like that. And next year, we will post the reference sheets to CBT support by grade level.
Excellent.
So those are available to you.
Great. And then one more, and I'm sorry to hog the time here, but also with the PDFs and that were available online, they were extremely helpful for administrators as well as for teachers. However, in pushing them out to the teachers who are inundated with a lot this time of year, the instant they're seeing a document that's 78 pages, 48 pages, it's very difficult to really get them motivated to dive into that. Has there been any thought put together to just like a very concise, short, need-to-know version for just teacher proctors, and all of the other appendices and so on can just be left in our administrative documents?
We've not really discussed condensing that, but I do have a checklist that I could post from the school administrator's manual that might be that concise list that you're thinking of.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your time.
So, you're welcome. No problem, Teresa. So I do want to make a little comment about the reference sheet, because there is a nuance with the reference sheet. The reference sheet is a tool in the toolbar for students taking the math CBT test if that grade level allows it, if that test allows it, right? So for students that are taking text-to-speech, the reference sheet is only available from the review screen. It's not a tool that is available from the toolbar in the bottom.
So we want to talk a little bit more about the test read accommodation. I see that there's a question here. Could you please repeat the process for ordering paper tests for students whose test read accommodations require it?
So, yeah, sorry, that was a little bit of my confusion in answering one of the questions earlier. There are no paper test read booklets that will be sent out for field testing schools. That was really how we ran operational tests. So I apologize. I was mixing up my test administration period. So if a student needs test read accommodation, and the really only options for computer-based field testing would be text-to-speech through the computer with the electronic voice, or a proctor sitting next to the student reading over the student's shoulder. And it's really whatever is the best fit for the student and their accommodation that they normally receive.
So Clara, does this mean that if my school ordered 5 test read booklets in a CBT classroom that they will not be shipped?
There was no way to order quantities for standalone field tests.
Right, I know.
The quantity orders were for operational, and that was sort of my my little bit of a brain freeze.
Okay, well, I've also provided that misinformation to the field, so our apologies on that. So just to clarify, there are no test read print booklets for CBT.
Right, because as you folks know, you don't order quantities for field tests. You just say, how do you want your field test delivered? That's through the platform, right?
Yeah. But now, so Clara, what if my class ordered 5 Spanish tests during the regular ordering?
So again, for Spanish students on math, we do offer the platform. We didn't talk about that, did we, Heather?
We didn't, Clara.
No,
We
math
should.
is available in a completely translated Spanish platform if you're doing math CBT. And what you would need to do is in the Nextera admin system. And where did they do that, Heather? Where do they code their? They have to code.
Oh, sure.
As
Okay.
Spanish.
Yeah, so a student is coded for Spanish, and the student will receive the Spanish test form for math, as well as the translated user interface, meaning the previous next buttons, all the bells and whistles, everything Spanish, soup to nuts. They'll do that on the student edit page, which is the same place that an accommodation is set. However, Spanish is selected by selecting Spanish for testing language. Testing language, select that to Spanish, and then as soon as that is selected, the teacher or the district test coordinator will see that Spanish appears in the accommodation section. There's a cute little icon that magically appears in that area where it says modify, and then if saving that will ensure that the student gets the Spanish CBT test. Clara, will they get print copies of the English test? Do we know? No? Okay.
Helene, can you take that one?
Helene or Steph, I think you're on the phone. If you could
Confirm whether or not
Heather.
we're sending English print booklets for our Spanish-speaking students.
I think I have to unmute.
I think the answer is yes.
Steph, I unmuted you.
Yes, so
Sorry.
for students that will be taking the Spanish math forms on the computer, English version reference booklets will be sent for those students. And again, as Clara said, those quantities are based off of what was ordered for operational.
Okay, great.
Thank
Good deal.
you.
And we do have an article out there on CBT support about those print booklets for Spanish-speaking students. What questions do we have next?
All right, so we have a couple. How do I activate my teachers? I see the teachers and students listed, but when I go to accounts to activate, there are no teachers listed. This is a little different than I think what you're thinking. So, Nicole, when you are a DTC and going into your district, you're changing in your up in the upper top of your change button, you'll need to drill down to the specific school that you need to activate those teachers for. So if you are just listed as the district and haven't drilled down to a specific school, you won't see those teachers listed under the account. So you just need to drill down a little further into each of the schools to find those teacher accounts. Let's see.
Did that answer the question?
She's not unmuted.
Okay.
All right, next question. We have noticed in the secure browser that if a student presses or the delete or backspace button outside of a text box, it exited the test. Is this a known issue?
For this year, because I believe that was an issue last year. Thomas
Vaughn, let's
unmute Thomas
unmute
Vaughn.
you. Thomas, I unmuted you if you want to clarify a little bit.
Hi, Thomas. Can you help us to understand a little more?
All right,
Okay.
Thomas may not have
Okay.
audio.
All right. That should not happen. So, but it was a known issue for last year. Last year we had issues where students using delete or the tab button were exiting the secure browser. We have not heard any reports of that this year. So if somebody has actually encountered that in the testing the secure browser, please let us know immediately.
He responded and said, yes, we experienced this issue this year.
Okay.
Thomas, if you could please
Yep.
maybe write into cbtsupport@niced.gov and give us some more information. Heather and I could work
Yep.
together to reach out to you directly. We'll keep an eye out for your contact.
And we will test that instance. Thank you.
So Heather, someone else just asked,
Sure.
how do they know for English what type of field test they're going to be attending?
Oh, that's a great
It's a
question,
great question.
Clara. Yeah. So we do know that the letters that were sent to the schools, they included the test assignment and the type of tests that the school is going to be provided with. First of all, short answer, I have an article out there on CBT support that provides a report and the specific type assignment that a school has received. We understand that the letters for ELA did not include the specific assignment. It may have only said MC, which is multiple choice, which aligns to reading in the teacher's directions. That's how they're labeled. Or CR, which is constructed response. Now, there are two different kinds of constructed response field tests. There are CR2, which that's how it's indicated in the report that's on CBT support and on the Office of State Assessment field test page. CR2 means that the school will be field testing 2-point constructed response questions. CR4 means that the school will be testing a combo of 2-point and 4-point. Teacher's directions for 2-point are short response. That's how they're labeled. Teacher's directions for 4-point are labeled short and extended response questions. Okay. Do you think that covered it, Clara?
That's great.
Thanks,
What
Clara.
about calculators, Heather?
The handheld calculators are allowed if the test session allows them. Do all the test sessions allow them for math?
They don't.
They don't.
I mean, all the grades.
All the grades don't. Okay, if the grade level allows calculators for the field test, the student can use their school-issued, school-provided handheld calculator. Now, the student also is provided with an online calculator within the NextEra test delivery system. However, we want our students to be able to be as comfortable as they can during any computer-based testing, and also we want that experience to mirror the instruction, the daily instruction the student experiences in the classroom. Okay. Thanks. That's a great question, Clara.
No problem. It's from Christy
Thanks.
McGrath.
Thanks,
Not our
Chris
Christy.
McGrath.
Tucker.
Okay. What else do we have? We have about 5 minutes left. Okay.
Any other hands? We like to hear voices.
We do like voices.
And please know, if we didn't get to your question, we will be creating an FAQ out of this.
You know what?
Posting all of these questions online.
And we're here all day for the rest of our lives. We're always here for you. You can always send us.
Any other hands?
If not, I have one final note. We did hear from a lot of folks that they are not receiving the email from Questar. If there's anybody who would like to work with us to prove our theory, we know that a lot of districts and schools, they have different settings for spam blockers for what email they allow into their servers. And we do believe that the @questarai.com domain might be being blocked just inadvertently by some networks. So if you are someone who did not receive the webinar URL from Questar, and you want to work with us and work with your IT group to have the QuestarAI.com domain whitelisted so that you can receive our communication, I would love to prove that theory, that email is not just getting lost. But that's a tip to all of you. Make sure that you're getting our email. Make sure that you can get email from CBT support if you're going to sign up for alerts, because it's the best way to contact us and to get our information. Is that it?
That is it. We appreciate everyone for joining us today. Again, we will follow up with any questions that we were not able to answer today. And any other questions that may come up, please reach out to Heather at cbtsupport@nised.gov.
And on one last note, Christy, will this be recorded and available online?
Yes, I'm about to stop the recording, and Heather will post it on CBT Support.
Okay. You can watch it at your leisure. Thanks so much.